There is nothing wrong with your internet. Do not attempt to adjust your settings. We are controlling the podcast. We control the squealing and the screams. We can make your heart flutter, your eyes blur from tears, or sharpen your mind to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit back. We are in control of what you hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your settings. You are about to experience the awe and mystery known as the female mind. You are now entering the Fangirl Zone.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Fangirl Zone. I'm Sean, Fangirl S, and today we are talking American Gods Episode 7, A Prayer from Mad Sweeny. So that's right, boys and girls, if you figured out our pattern, we have today Mr. Gomez Not Adams back. Hello!
Hello!
Welcome!
Yay! So happy to be here.
We really do get the weird ones. I don't know what it is. Every time you're on, you have the weird, male full frontal episodes is what it is. You think Jennifer would have them, but no.
You know what? It's about pushing boundaries and seeing what you're comfortable with.
Just strange. So yes, A Prayer for Mad Sweeny. I wonder what this episode could be about.
Gee, I wonder. Actually, I will say, when I was looking at the original episode list, I was worried that this was going to be Mad Sweeney's final episode.
Oh. Okay, I could totally see that, by the way it's kind of shown, but it was, I really like this. It was a totally different way that they presented any of the gods, too.
Absolutely, and deservedly so, because it is the story of one of the main characters. And it shows in a similar flashback way that we saw Laura's pre-Shadow life.
Right.
And before him going to prison. And there's just a lot more to Mad Sweeny than, the couple of years before Shadow. So trying to get more of a whole sense of where that character is coming from, I think, was really nice. Obviously, through the eyes of Essie McGowan, and how Mad Sweeny intersecting with her life directly affected her life, both good and ill. And it directly alludes to the fact that, you know what? The good stuff that happened to you, I'd have handed that. Shit that happened to you, that was me too.
Now, okay, obviously you guys have watched this episode, otherwise you would not be listening to us, because that's kind of weird, because we're going to spoil something. So,
everything.
Essie McGowan was played by the Emily Browning. So, yes. Is she, in fact, supposed to be a descendant of Essie McGowan?
There is that possibility. I think what is probably even more telling is these kind of characters always exist. So we got to see a different side of the Laura Moon character in Essie. So without sort of the ennui that Laura has, instead you have Essie, who's just in a crap position in life with no real way to better herself, except maybe on her back. And it backfires. It doesn't work out because all of a sudden the grandmother discovers, oh, you have my locket. You obviously stole it. Therefore, you're going to be condemned to death now. And Laura is okay, there is also a thief. There are no characters that we've met that aren't con men in some way, I feel.
Okay, I totally see it. So let me give the brief description because I totally passed that part up. Let's see. Her brief reunion with Shadow over far too quickly, Laura turns to an unlikely travel companion to find her way back to life and back to Shadow. Mad Sweeney's long, winding, and often tragic past is explored. So this was great because the way it opened, actually, I really liked the whole narrative of. Because you had Mr. Ibis and you had...
Jackal.
Thank you.
Anubis.
I'm blanking on the name all the time.
Anubis.
And
Ibis and Jackal.
Yes, I don't know why I total brain fart. That's what it's been this week. Sorry, guys.
This is why you have a partner.
In the morgue, or I don't even know.
Funeral home.
I would say, is it a funeral home? It's got to be.
It's in their funeral home.
So, Jackal is working on a body, which was the full frontal that we got to see today. And the weirdness when he's putting the jaw back into place. Okay, I was just ugh, but whatever.
Pinch it a little bit.
Yeah, it's ugh. Okay, but Mr. Ibis is oh well, here's some beer and reminds me, or no, not even reminds me, brewed the same way, right? Is it what it was?
Exactly. And then Jackal looks over and sees that Ibis's fingers are twitching. And he's like, you have a story that you need to write. I've got this.
Yeah, I love it because
by
he's
the way,
like...
by the way, we're going to have 2 more people coming in soon.
Right, and he's like, oh, a lover's quarrel? It's like, we don't get those very much.
Anymore.
Okay, that's kind of weird. But, yeah, I see the story in your fingers. Because that, I wasn't even paying attention to his hands.
Right.
So the fact that they put that in there, I thought was great.
Yeah, and then you notice him walking towards his book and getting ready to write. And you do see, and it draws attention to the fact that his fingers are twitching. Like, okay, I really do have a story I need to tell right now.
And that was the whole narrative. Like, Mr. Ibis telling the story of, well, going way back to Mad Sweeny and S.C. McGowan. Now, I'm excited. Like I said last episode, which you probably didn't catch this yet. I finally have the book. I'm waiting till the season's over, but I finally found the book. This and Handmaid's Tale, which were 2 impossible books to find around by me. I finally got them. So I'm ready. I'm ready as soon as the seasons are over. It's very good.
I feel terrible because what I completely failed to pick up on when I read the book, and even now that American Gods is out, is that Mad Sweeny is actually based on an actual person from Irish folklore.
Really?
Yes.
And was that character's name Mad Sweeny?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
It was the Mad King, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce the Gaelic because I'm going to butcher it. But the idea, what happened was there was this quote-unquote Mad King, and it was around the time that Ireland was beginning to go towards Christianity. And he got really upset that there was a priest building a church on his property. And he went out to go yell at the priest, and his wife tried to stop him and grabbed hold of his cloak and just pulled on the thread until poor Mad Sweeny was not mad yet, but completely stark naked and going to go yell at the priest. The priest curses Sweeney and tells him that he's going to die in battle, which goes back to the episode piece where you see him laying there going, oh, I looked in the flames and saw I was going to die in battle, and I ran away. And the whole concept of, well, I was a bird for a while. What happened was the king, after he fled battle, because he was driven mad by it, went and lived in a tree while naked for a period of time, thinking that he was a bird.
Okay, wait, I realized he was living in a tree because he was naked. Okay.
Well, he went mad and literally and sincerely thought that he was a bird. So kind of the evolution of like, okay, so you were this king in history, and then over the years, people took you and made you into some sort of divine figure, and because of the way the Irish worked, eventually you became one of the people of the mound, one of the Aishi, as they refer to it in this episode as well. And now he's a leprechaun, all thanks to General Mills.
He does mention General Mills. Now, I want to say, too, because when it starts, after we have Mr. Ibis starting, I still have not gotten an answer of who is actually doing the calligraphy, because that is awesome. And if that's the actor who plays Mr. Ibis, I am like in total awe. I kind of didn't think so, but I asked that question last episode. I'm like, who is doing this? Because it's amazing, and nobody answered.
Digital effect.
Really? You think so?
I'd be sad. A little bit, just because of the way that they do the pen dipping in the ink.
Well, yeah, that part, but I feel like it is so beautiful. Anyway. You know people can write like that, so
yes,
I don't know why I'm fixated on that. No, I have like,
not one of them.
Mine looks like hieroglyphics. I want to say that we had the woman who played 2 parts. She was Essie's grandmother, and then kind of comes
old
back,
Essie.
and she's old Essie. And I'm going to butcher her name, and I feel horrible if I do this. Fanula Flanagan. She has been in so many different things. And the second I seen her, I'm like, focusing on her, and I'm like, okay, wait, I know that face. She's been in tons of things. And you may not recognize the name, because I know the name is not what caught with me. But because I do sci-fi talk, she was in Defiance. So
okay.
She played Nikki, and I'm like, that's why. Like, that was the first thing when I was going through her biography, or you know what I mean. She was in Lost, Three Wise Women, Invention of Lying. So she's been in a ton of stuff. She has like 126 different, like movies.
Of course, she's one of those great character actors. I
always remember her being like crazy strong actress. And the fact that they have her then is a twofer, I thought was just amazing, which I know that sounds weird, but I don't think too many people necessarily caught the fact that she was the grandmother and then came back around, because they almost didn't focus on the grandmother's face when she's telling young Essie all the stories.
Right.
And I just love that you see how it's passed down and how it was, I'm going to say back in the olden days, which I know that sounds weird, but these are how stories were passed down. And it's like, this is how you got your kids to behave too. Listen, the fairies will come for you. There's a fairy mound right over there. We have to do this.
There's also a reason why we have such knowledge of Egyptian mythology, Greek and Roman mythology, but we don't have so much of the background in Irish mythology and the Celtic mythology necessarily, because so much of it was oral tradition.
Mm-hmm.
And so very little of it got written down. So trying to figure out what the actual beliefs are, what the practices were, and everything else is kind of hit or miss, because nothing got written down. And a bunch of it got subsumed into the Catholic Church some of them got turned into saints,
mm-hmm.
St. Bridget, for example, but so many of them didn't. And so now it's a question of, okay, so how exactly, who were the gods exactly? What were their stories? Well, we don't really know for sure, because, again, so much of it was lost.
I think it's really weird, too, in this episode, how later on they're talking about how there's no room in the new world for the old stories, for the fairies mm-hmm. and the leprechauns. And it's so weird because I've read a series of books, a couple series, that focus on fairies and leprechauns and magic coming to the new world and settling back in the time of, like, Abraham Lincoln, which is just kind of weird that they had it, but it just, I thought that was kind of like a weird and random tie-in, because we really don't get a lot of, like you said, Irish mythology. And I kind of want, like, the more you start getting these little pieces, these little tasty bites, you really want more.
Absolutely. But I remember as a kid reading, Bullfinch's Mythology. And these other mythology books, and they always focused on the Greek and Roman ones.
Mm-hmm.
And you might get a smattering of Norse, but that was it. You never really learned about the rest of it at all. And definitely not in school. If you want to learn about any of this at all, it was on your own.
Right.
So I feel that's kind of like missing some of that story tradition. And I'm really interested in those story traditions, not mainly because I think it's fascinating, but as a writer as well. Like, I'm kind of interested in like tracking that thread of story through time, which I think is really interesting.
Well, this, too, it had a whole different bit of history that you don't hear a lot about either. Because, like you said, Essie, in the beginning, is basically trying to get the young man of the house she's working for to fall in love with her. Well, they didn't exactly fall in love.
Get lost, at least.
Yeah.
They get lost.
And then he gives her, this beautiful necklace that's a promise that he'll come back for her after school. Yeah, okay, first of all, you knew that was going to be bad, right?
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's a line. That's a line.
And yet, the grandmother who owns it was pissed, and he's, of course, not going to admit that, he gave it to her because he's been screwing her. No, she must have taken it and would not make eye contact with anybody. Come on.
I would totally not sleep with the pretty kitchen maid.
Right. Everybody in that room knew that kid was lying because he would not make eye contact with anyone.
And let's face it, the house might be big. It's not that big.
Right. But, so she's going to court, but because she's young, she may not hang. They're going to send her off to be an indentured servant. Which is something that we don't hear a lot about in history. And we've heard about slavery, of course. And you were treated different.
Indentured servants had much different rights than slaves.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm very hesitant to draw that direct connection.
Like I said, okay, similar, not exact.
Because it is a very touchy subject.
Oh, yeah.
for many people trying to draw that connection between the two. I mean, one of the advantages though of the indentured servitude, obviously, was once you were done, you were done, and then you could actually own your own land.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was going to come after you because the color of your skin was different and say, no, you're still a slave, but I was freed. Nope, sorry, you look like a slave, you're going to be a slave.
Right.
So it was easier to assimilate.
I just
into the new world.
I find that this is something that we have not heard about. Like, I don't remember. I mean, I've heard what indentured servitude was, but I don't remember really learning anything about it.
Growing up in New York and with a lot of Irish American friends and family, I learned about indentured servitude.
Okay.
And I learned about coffin ships, which were the ships that would come over from England and Ireland over to the New World, and literally packed with people. I mean, the reason why they would throw wakes for people in Ireland when they were leaving Ireland, because they were going to be as good as dead.
Oh.
They're never going to see them. You're leaving your family. You were never going to see them again.
Wow. That's not something I would have even thought about, though.
So they would throw you basically a wake while you were still living, before you got on board, before you went on the ship.
Okay.
I mean, obviously we know about Australia and how Australia was used for that as well. Okay, especially for debtors and stuff. We always hear like, yeah, they sent the criminals there. Yeah, by criminals you mean people who were in debt and were in debtors' prison. Got it. But they also use the colonies in the New World for that as well.
And I think this was just because they're showing the ships again, like huge. I mean, obviously huge difference between what we've seen with Mr. Nancy, because we didn't see any of the gods like
Correct.
trying to rile everybody up, but we did see Essie still praying to her gods
and still being sacrificed.
Yes. And I thought that was interesting, to show the difference with that, which, like I said, obviously the two were very different. I just had not learned about it because living in the Midwest, go figure, they're not really talking about that. My family's Swedish and Mexican,
It's amazing what you learn growing up in New York because of being such a portal for immigration.
Yeah, I mean, I had family come through New York, but yeah, they came out here totally different, like.
Yeah, my family came through New York, but they didn't. I mean, the furthest that my grandfather got was Queens.
Mine made it all the way to Chicago. That's as far as any of them made it then. So just showing the differences, like the way they're talking to their gods, it just kind of made me think it's like so interesting and kind of harkens to today's religion. When you see them leaving bread, and then, you have, I can only talk about Catholicism, because I don't know exactly all of Christianity, if it's the same, but, you have the communion wafer, which was, like holy bread, and then, they're leaving bread for their gods, and I'm like, okay.
Nothing like that about it. Nothing like that in Catholicism. That is what it is. It is the body of Christ transubstantiated into the body of Christ. So yes. Anyway. And
then how we seen the grandmother talk, and then we see Essie talk later, how during the harvest you leave a whole loaf of bread for your gods, which, okay, the bread's going to disappear because there are wild animals. Even if you're not believing in anything, there's wild animals out there.
Absolutely.
I totally, it's not a stretch.
But it's also one of those things where, and I think this actually is very true, where, especially in Ireland, Catholicism did take hold, and it took hold early.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure Ireland was Catholic even before England was.
They were Catholic before it was trendy. Is that what it is?
Exactly. Yes. And one of the ways that happened was through the church realizing, okay, if we can co-opt your gods and work them into the religion, it will make the transition easier for you.
Okay.
Okay, which is how we end up with Saint Bridget, who was a goddess of fire and fertility, becoming Saint Bridget. That's how we end up with Saint Deirdre. I mean, it were just these different Celtic and Irish gods who ended up going into and becoming part of the Catholic Church that way. And so, yeah, you know what? If you want to keep up your traditions and do it on the side, we don't want to know about it because it's Mother Church and it's the Catholic Church, but we're not going to completely tell you to stop doing what you're doing, and why are we going to have a fight on our hands if we don't need to?
That's really interesting. See, again, I don't know the whole backstory. See, I was really bad in CCD. I did not pay attention, obviously. But of course, they're not going to tell you about this either, going back in Sunday school.
And here's where I pull back a little bit. I had 8 years of Catholic elementary, K through 8, and then 4 years of the Jesuits in high school.
Oh, man, they were just beating it into you, huh?
Actually, the Jesuits were more like question everything.
Oh,
everything.
Nice.
I mean, I had a wonderful priest, chaplain, Father Van Dyke, who said the whole reason he became a priest was because he kept on getting into fights with God, so he decided to make it a full-time job.
That's interesting. Okay, I don't know how I just randomly started talking about everything but the show. I'm so sorry,
anyway,
but let's bring it back.
Sorry for the digress.
You know, people are like, what the hell are you talking about?
Because mythology is such a key part to this show.
Yes.
And in understanding what those backstories are and the stories that make up the United States, even the ones that we forgot about, like indentured servitude, like the coffin ships, they still form an important part of many people's identity in this country, I feel. I mean, my mom still gets bitter about the fact that for a period of time it was no Irish need apply in the United States. And that still really riles her up. Did it ever affect her directly? No. Does she still get upset about it? Hell yes.
Just something like ingrained in you. That's why watching this, seeing Essie/Laura and how similar they were and how they kind of had that like blasé attitude, both of them. Because, okay, now obviously we have Essie who's like really pissed. Yeah, really pissed that the man that she thought loved her turned her back on her.
Yeah.
And then we have Laura, who in fact turned her back on the man who adored her.
Absolutely. And you also have that, okay, so why did Laura want to rob the casino? She was bored.
Mm-hmm.
Why did Essie decide to become a thief? Well, society was going to treat her like one anyway, so she might as well be one.
See, and I was thinking, the way I took it watching that part was that she didn't want to depend on anybody else. Which is kind of what I felt like Laura was doing, too. It's like, okay, she got bored, but she doesn't want to depend on somebody for her happiness or excitement. So a little bit different. But, like, you know, Essie didn't want to depend on a man to take care of her, even though he saved her from the indentured servitude and married her. It's like, okay, I don't understand.
Why did you betray? I mean, the fact that she betrayed the sea captain always is something that happened in the book, as well, and it always struck me as a false move for that character. Like there was nothing to indicate up to that point that Essie was going to be like, "You're going to be gone for 16 weeks. I'm going to just rob you blind."
And I don't know what it was. I didn't understand that unless it was just because her heart was so broken that she was ticked, and so then she's going to start robbing him and then wandering around and robbing everyone as she's giving her props to her gods and, like, leaving out what she's supposed to until she doesn't.
But until she doesn't, and then she gets caught.
Yes.
Because the wind blows, they're like the wind. They blow both ways. Which I just feel that, like, could be taken so many wrong ways.
And it was a piece of lace. It's like, really? That's what you're willing to hang for? It just seemed like, I don't know, the stupidest thing in the world.
It didn't stop people from stealing.
I know. Nothing stopped people from, you know, committing crimes. It still doesn't stop people from committing crimes.
Yes, exactly.
But it's just one of those things that's like, okay, you're just kind of a klepto at this point. I get it.
Pretty much.
And then she finally meets Mad Sweeny. But was it supposed to be Mad Sweeny? Officially?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Because in the
Very
jail,
so.
that's very cold and damp, and poor Essie, in her full, beautiful gown, too.
And what sells me on it being Mad Sweeny was when he's talking about delivering coin to the king.
Okay.
And she says, well, why don't you go to the New World? It's like, well, they don't have a king. And he goes, well, they're going to have a king eventually.
Now, I didn't know if that was supposed to be, like, they just assumed that was how the New World was going to turn out, or if she was thinking religious-wise.
Well, they were under a king at that time.
Mm-hmm.
They were under the King of England. And so the thought might be, okay, eventually they might get their own king, and that might just be S.E. daydreaming. But the fact that Mad Sweeny then has that coin that he wants to give to the King of America.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and that's the that's the coin that Laura ends up with.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Makes me think that that is really Sweeny that's in the jail with her.
Because I was thinking that somehow that is the lucky coin that comes back around.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, the next thing we know, we see Miss Essie having a visit from the warden. Is that what they call her?
Pretty much, yes. The jailer.
With a whole bunch of food and just looking at her, and you're like, ew, this isn't good. And then the next scene really isn't good.
I guess if it's a decision between hanging and not hanging.
I guess. But did she not look bored as hell during that sex scene?
It was definitely like, I am putting myself through this, I'm going to get through this, and I'm never going to think of this again.
Now, I have a question for you, but let me talk a moment about the next scene. Because the next scene, she's in front of the judge and shows her very round belly. And they have to admit that, oh, yes, she is pregnant, so they will not kill a pregnant woman. Now, do you think that the warden intentionally got her pregnant, or he was just like, hey, I'm having my jollies, and crap, this happened?
So.
Uh-oh.
No. You'll notice that she has that talk with Sweeny first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the warden shows up and makes the offer.
Yeah.
Right? I think I see the hand of Sweeny involved.
Okay.
In that chain of events.
So, like, he was able to see, like, the bigger picture?
Yes, I got you thrown in prison because, let's face it, when she get thrown in prison, the night that she forgets to leave out the offering. Then she's back in jail. She has the conversation with the person who I told is Sweeny.
Mm-hmm.
And then the warden shows up and makes the offer. And, lo and behold, she does get pregnant.
Because he does say she wouldn't meet the hangman for 12 weeks or something like that.
Correct. So, I do see the hand of Sweeny at work there.
Okay. Well, being pregnant and they're not going to hang her, okay, you're now going to the colonies.
Again. Oh, yeah. And if you thought the first trip was bad.
This is horrible. And they showed another woman, and this is what messed me up, because she says something about, having nightmares. They show another woman who had died, apparently in childbirth, because the baby is laying on her, like, stomach, and they just shoot him right out, like an open window, into the sea. I'm like, holy crap. Again, not something that even though you know that they did not keep the bodies, it's like not something you really think about when you read any history text.
Again, there's a reason why they were called coffin ships.
Yes. Ugh.
And I think actually in Dublin, there is a quote-unquote coffin ship that's famous for the sole reason that nobody ever died on it.
Really?
Yes. Like, it made the trip more than once, back and forth, but no one ever actually died on it. Now, I think it was from the 18th century, 19th century, not, I guess it would be, 1700s at that point, that they were showing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a later ship, but even so, they were still packing them in on top of each other, so. But, yeah.
But after Essie gets to the New World, now we're assuming that she's had the baby while on the ship.
Correct.
Probably towards the end of the journey.
Or very soon after. Well, I think they show her coming off the ship with the baby.
Yeah.
So
I'm assuming very close to the end of the journey, which may be, other than, of course, Mad Sweeny, the reason that she made it through. And then just...
And it's amazing she survived childbirth, because let's face it, those conditions.
Oh, yeah. That's...
Hello, infection.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's not something I want to think. We're going to skip past that part. But she is,
Sorry.
she is bought, taken it. I don't even know how they did the whole thing.
Basically, they sold. Look at it.
They bought their debt, right?
Bought the debt.
Okay.
Yeah. So imagine if you have your student loan and somebody comes along and buys it and says, "Great, now you work for me."
I'd probably be so screwed at that point because damn, the student loans.
How many years?
Yeah, with my luck, my job will buy it. I'm never leaving. But anyway,
Person thought that
the man needed a wet nurse because his wife just died in childbirth. Oh, hey,
Correct.
Look at this. A woman coming off with a baby. Oh, bonus. Which I thought it's weird. It creeps me out thinking about the whole wet nurse thing. I don't know why. And I know there's all sorts of reasons that it can honestly be needed in this case. Like the mother died. You need somebody to be.
Uh-huh.
And there's, of course, thousands of other reasons, but it's just weird to me. And
most people could not run down to the store and buy a bottle of formula.
I think it's more because I don't have kids that it's one of those things that's really strange in my mind. Like, how can you just give this kid, be like, here, just latch on over here? But it was more normal, I guess, back then.
Well, but they actually go into it in more detail in the book.
Okay.
So, Essie nurses her, at that point, I don't want to say owner necessarily, but the person she's working for, she has to nurse his kid first. And then her kid gets whatever's left.
Okay.
So her kid doesn't grow up to be as strong.
Okay.
She then gives birth to, once they get married, she gives actually birth to a third child.
Right.
Okay, which those three end up developing the bizarre love triangle.
What?
Well, her kid isn't related.
Uh-huh.
So there are three kids. Two of them are not directly related to each other at all, because it was the father and or her new husband and the dead wife. You have Laura and the warden's kid, and then the new guy in the new world and Essie's kid.
Oh God, I'm gonna be creeped out reading this, aren't I?
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh jeez.
Anyway, so and there ends up being a murder along the way, and it all ends badly. So they left that out of the episode, which I was actually kind of thankful for, because that just got depressing as hell.
Yeah, we had enough weirdness happening. I don't need that too. Yeah.
And actually, that's one of the things that I was a little bit upset with this episode was that it felt like it helped kill the momentum of the season a little bit. And that we were taking such a big break from the ongoing storyline to focusing on this flashback. And I realized why they wanted to do that. They wanted to build up the Mad Sweeny character and show where he came from. But I just felt that so much of that kind of sapped the momentum going into the finale.
I feel like it could have added like another episode or two because, yeah, you're right, going into the finale, I feel like, I understand building this and showing this. Yeah, but this was a big portion. That's why we're spending so much time right now on it. It's a big portion of the episode.
I might have just placed it. I might try to frame it maybe earlier in the season rather than right before the finale. That's all. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy it.
I did like this one too. And as it progressed, like you said, they have kids and they go on and Essie's telling the story. She's still putting everything out. And I love when she's like, and when I sent my children to learn their letters, I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah. And all of them.
A bit of salt.
Not just the boys. The girl went too.
Absolutely. We put a bit of salt in one pocket and a bit of bread in the other to see them safely home again.
Which, I don't know. Throwing salt, is that like macing somebody? I don't know. But obviously tradition, going forth. And then as a grandmother, she's telling the story to the grandchildren, and the one starts crying. Now, really? Why are you crying?
Oh, what I actually thought of with that? Have you seen Moana?
No, not yet. I know, okay. I'm probably one of the only people right now.
Well, there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where the old grandmother is telling the story of the monsters and heroes, and all of the kids, except for little Moana, start bawling their eyes out. I was just like, I've seen this scene before.
Yeah, just watching this going, seriously? What? It's not even scary. Maybe I'm really desensitized because I was talking about that on another podcast, but...
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I can see where you're like, if you're a sensitive soul, where that might get really scared that something's going to come along and if you're like suck your soul out or
no, live in your belly and you'll never be full.
Oh,
never be full.
that's right,
Never.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, I must have one of those things living in me because man, I can eat. That sounds. I never fell asleep by a stream though.
Oh. Yeah, but I mean, poor little blonde pixie girl decides that I can't handle it.
Don't tell those stories
scary.
anymore. You're scaring them. It's like, really? Okay, whatever. And then, move on. She's sitting on her porch, and she is, again, Fedula Flanagan, the older woman, and...
Peeling her apples.
She was sleeping, though. Didn't she knock out?
Yeah. Yeah, but she had been peeling apples.
And then next thing you know, here comes Mad Sweeny, who looks so weird because the hair is different and it was like totally covering his ears and everything. It was just weird looking.
The one thing that was the same, the boots. He's wearing the same boots.
And they make comment to that later.
Yes.
Which I thought was great. But, he comes and he talks to Essie and she doesn't get who he is at first, and then he shows the coin that she had left all those years ago. And I thought it was really sweet because, we had basically, when Jacko came from that woman, how he was sweet and nice to her in regards to taking her. And, it was just a very nice conversation. And you have older Essie, like, you did good by me. And he's like, well, I did bad too. So he was just being honest with her.
He owned up to it.
And she's like, I have no quarrel with you. And he's like, well, take my hand. And I'm like, oh, really? It was so sweet.
It was.
And then when we
Absolutely.
flip everything over, because, then Essie dies, and they say only half her apples were peeled. But you flip it all over into Laura now. And you see, and this is what a lot of people were talking about on Twitter. Do you think that Mad Sweeny, even though he's pissed about the coin, is helping because she reminds him so much of Essie, or because she is in fact part of Essie's line? And this is why I had asked you that, because I'm like, you see the differences that are the same, but...
Or is it guilt because he's the one that killed her?
Killed.
Laura.
Oh, yeah, because they showed that. Now, that was the weirdest thing. And I was a bit confused, and it took probably a good 5 minutes for it to all sink in. Because we have finally, Laura and Sweeny is pissing in the weeds and talking to Odin's birds.
Yep.
And just, as Salim is praying, and he's just pissed off, and here comes Laura, and she's like, you're talking to it? First of all, I'm like, oh, God, really? Are we actually going to talk about dick jokes?
Alone while he's taking a piss.
I was like, oh, God, this is where we're going. And he just slips and mentions that they're going to House on the Rock after he tries to save her because he's doing this for her. And she's like, what? And he's like, fuck. Because then she, takes off running to Salim. Yeah, you're free. They're going to House on the Rock. Go find your God. And so they steal the ice cream truck. So they're driving the ice cream truck down.
Oh, which was great, by the way, because the guy wants Laura
Yeah.
to hit him instead. It's like, like, no. You trust me. You want me to do it.
I thought that was funny, too. So as they're driving the ice cream truck, we're learning more. And he does say something about walking in the boots. He's walked a long road. I need to write this down. But it was mentioned with the boots, and she's the one who said something about you've walked a long time.
Right.
And I thought that was really weird if she didn't really understand what he was talking about. That's why I'm like, there's got to be a thread. So do they not actually say that they are connected in the book?
Well, they're not connected at all.
Okay.
Because also Mad Sweeny is not the one that goes and meets Essie McGowan at the end.
Oh, okay.
And it's not even Essie, it's, I'm trying to remember what the name of the book is, because in the book, the woman is Cornish, not Irish.
Okay. I think her name's Essie, though, because everybody was talking about Essie.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, they actually changed where the character is from.
Okay.
From the book to the series.
Okay.
So that was one of the major departures. And it's not that major when you think about it, but major enough.
Okay.
So they went for a deliberately Irish as opposed to Cornish character.
Okay. Well, of course, there's an accident, and there's a rabbit. Why this little
Easter!
white rabbit jumps out, and, okay, I'm all for cute little rabbits and trying to avoid them, but what was with the huge jerk of this truck?
Because Laura
screen
sucks
time.
at cars.
They flip over. I love this. She goes flying out. I know, this is horrible. Like I say, she goes flying out, and her stitches pop open. Out comes the coin, and her eyes glaze over. She's laying there like organs had flown out. And I'm watching this going, okay, that's one way to get the coin back, but ew.
Very much ew.
But they're on their way to try to resurrect her. So at this point, he could be like, I'm going to wash my hands of this. Because he picks up his coin, and this is when he starts cussing up a storm in Gaelic. So if anybody knows Gaelic, somebody tell me exactly what he said and if he said it correctly.
And we discover that Sweeney has a conscience.
And again, on Twitter, a lot of people were asking this. Is he doing this because he feels that he owes a debt to Essie because they look alike, their family, something?
I think it's because he feels guilty about the fact that he was the one that got her killed in the first place.
Which, this is confusing me too, because what we seen when Laura died, I thought it was Odin's birds.
Odin's birds are watching.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean they were acting.
Okay.
But you don't know. Okay, so when we see the wreck happen, we see it just what's happening with Robbie and Laura.
Okay.
We don't see what happens with the other car that they move to avoid.
Okay.
And we don't know why that driver did or did not stop.
All right.
So it's very likely that other driver was Sweeney.
Because then they show him
standing there and then saying it's done.
Okay. That's why I didn't understand, because I was like, was he just there to try to make it happen? Or was he actually in the car? I was confused with that, so, all right.
But I think he had something to do. I'm not sure what exactly he did, but he definitely had a role in that wreck.
Okay. And so that may be why he was feeling guilty and wanted to resurrect her.
Or feeling guilty enough to be willing to help her.
Which, I thought it was nice. Okay, he, puts whatever organ flew out back in her, throws the coin back in, and then she, gets up and hits him.
Well, and here's the thing. I think that she wasn't upset. She would have been less upset having her clothes off. She was more upset with the fact that he literally saw her without her skin on. Even more naked than naked can be.
Mm-hmm.
And as vulnerable as she was, and that's what made her so upset.
But he could have left your ass there and been done with you.
Yeah, but the question is, does she know that? Because what we don't know is, in the time between him putting the coin back, okay, and when it had fallen out in the first place, where did Laura's spirit go?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Okay, and if there's any one big weakness in this episode, that's it. It's it doesn't show what happens. When she died, should have Anubis been there to scoop her right back up and say, "Ha, I've got you now because you're dead."
I don't know. Maybe she was kind of hovering and.
Well, and she doesn't act as if she knew that the coin was out of her body at any point.
Okay.
Just gets up and socks.
And then she's like, "Don't look."
As if all of a sudden, as if that's all it took was oh wait, I fell out of the car and now I'm back up again. No time has passed.
And she just flips the truck back up, "Let's go." I'm seriously.
It was a great scene, by the way.
It was cool. But he needs to be I could have walked away from you. So obviously.
But I don't think he's ever going to do that.
Obviously, there's no way we're getting to House on the Rock next episode, right?
Oh, you think? That's why there's at least a season 2.
Oh, I'm glad there's a season 2. Which I think had they not planned a season 2, it would have been really hard to cram it all into just 8 episodes.
It would have been heartbreaking.
We would not have gotten the backstories at all, I don't think.
And there's so much more backstory to be had.
Oh, there's so much happening.
So much backstory.
So I liked the backstory more than the now, just because Laura was kind of a pain in the ass, and I liked Essie better.
Yeah. Well, again, the two biggest assholes on the show are Sweeny and Laura.
Right. So it's like 2 jerks in an ice cream truck is the story going right now, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Wesley's an asshole too, but in a charming way.
Yeah, because these 2 don't have filters.
None. Absolutely none.
One last question before we wrap this up.
Sure.
Do you think that, because Sweeny got out and he was not hurt, which was surprising.
I think he was limping a little bit, but...
Yeah, but he's been, like, really messed up lately because he doesn't have his coin. Do you think just because of proximity, he was less messed up in this episode then?
Quite possibly.
Okay. I was wondering, if he's got to stay that close to her, which probably irritates him too.
Of course, also having to sit in the freezing cold ice cream truck.
I'd be okay with that. I don't know. Like, I'm always hot.
Sweeny was like, I'm not a hanger steak.
But he had no problem eating the ice cream.
Well, when life gives you lemons.
Yeah, I guess. All right. So anything else about this episode that you want to touch on that I kind of went all crazy and all over the place with?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched all the major points we wanted to. So
next episode is the finale. Oh my god.
Oh my god. We're going to meet Easter.
Yes. And
we'll see Mr. Nancy again.
Yes. That is what I'm like super excited about, seeing the preview and seeing Mr. Nancy. And if you're tweeting, of course we're tweeting on Fangirl Zone, but you have to pay attention because you have a God Squad tweeting too. Because Orlando Jones always does, and they hashtag God Squad, which I think is hilarious. Who else was tweeting this episode other than obviously the writer's room? It does it every episode. Fremantle Media is often, tweeting back and forth too. We had, oh my gosh, which one was it? Musa Kraish, the Jinn. He was tweeting.
Okay.
Like I said, Orlando Jones. I must have said Orlando Bloom.
Yep. Very different.
Very different. Bilquist, Yatai Badaki. Oh, crap. There was one more of the gods that were tweeting, and I'm going to blank on who it is.
It wasn't Xenobog, was it?
No.
It was Mr. Mayor. That would be hysterical. That would be funny.
I don't even know if he has a Twitter account.
You should hit it with the hammer.
I thought it was great. And it wasn't Ian McShane either. Maybe it was just, Neil Gaiman does a lot, actually.
Yes, he does.
And if you didn't hear me last episode, New York Comic Con, if you're going, Shadow Moon himself, Ricky Whittle, and Bilquist, Yatai Badaki are going to be there. They're going to have a panel. So super excited. Hoping to go, but if not, and you go, take pictures for us.
Very cool.
Yes, it's so awesome that they're going to be there. And you know how they always add people, so you never know who else might show up. Which is exciting.
Absolutely.
All right, so this was an awesome episode. I'm really sad because we're getting really close to the end. Yes, tears. So hopefully you guys are liking everything. We do want to hear from you, hear what your thoughts are and everything. So fangirlzonepodcast@gmail.com. Of course, check out the website, fangirlzone.com. We just moved our RSS feed, so you should still be able to find everything on our page, of course. Spreaker, we're on Podbean now. And we are on iTunes, which they are fixing the feed. So if you're hearing this via subscription, you know why things might be kind of weird for anybody else who cannot find this show yet. But it should be fixed, hopefully, within the next 24 hours. So, let's talk a second about Mr. Gomez, not Adams.
So, Broadswords and Blasters, the pulp magazine that I am co-editor of, we just released the cover for issue 2, which we are super excited about. It was done by the fantastic Luke Spooner of Carrion House. We also did our issue 1 cover. Only this time we actually have it based on one of the stories.
Nice.
That's appearing in the magazine called Feathered Death, which the writer just saw the cover. He's like, "Is this based on my story? If it is, that's so cool." Like, if nothing else, we made somebody's day today.
That's awesome.
So really, really excited about that. That'll be coming out actually mid-July. Issue 1 is still available. Broadswordsandblasters.com. We are running our weekly column called Pulp Appeal, which is all looking at different writers and characters of the pulp era. We recently did one on H. Rider Haggard, who did Alan Quatermain, of course, and King Solomon's Mine. We recently had a guest post from Matt Spencer talking about Joe Lansdale's Captain Leonard series and sort of the new pulp. So yeah, come check us out and see what we got going on.
And did I read something that you opened submissions again for the next episode?
We have not yet opened submissions yet. Those will be opening up end of July for issue 4, which will be coming out in, 2018.
Oh God, that's so far away. And yet not.
And yet not. Because issue 3 is full.
That's awesome. Guys.
So that'll be coming out in October.
So don't forget to check that out.
But we will also be running, once we actually open up the pre-order for issue 2, we'll be running a 99-cent sale on Amazon for the digital edition of issue 1.
Cool. So see, you guys can go on and download it and help support one of your podcasters. And, of course, read all the awesome stories from all the different authors, because you never know who's going to be the next big thing.
Exactly.
All right. So for this episode of Fangirl Zone, I'm Sean Fangirl S.
And Gomez Not Adams.
And until next time.